The Art of Meditation by Joel Goldsmith. Study Guide, Part 1. Chapter 1. Number 1. From the moment that we know consciousness through experience, life changes for us because there is a relaxation of our personal selfhood. Number 2. The purpose of this book is to help students practice the art of meditation by which the word takes root, so that they can come into an actual awareness, an actual consciousness of the living in the spirit. Number 3. In achieving conscious contact with the sea of spirit, we find divine love pouring itself into expression. Number 4. It is only as we learn to look within to this infinite invisible, the universal centre of being within us, that we begin to understand the nature and secret of grace. Number 5. The infinite unseen. Number 6. The awareness of the presence of consciousness is developed by patience and perseverance, in quietness and stillness, and by abstaining from the use of mental power or physical might, so that it may function. Chapter 2. Number 1. The purpose of meditation is to attain the awareness that takes over our experience and lives our life. Number 2. Meditation is never for attaining things. It is for the purpose of realizing consciousness. Number 3. In achieving the experience of consciousness, our good appears as whatever the need may be. Number 4. We have no demonstration to make except our spiritual selfhood. Number 5. We give up the world, not by removing ourselves to some remote spot, but by giving up our desires for that which the world can give. Number 6. In meditation, we seek consciousness and nothing but consciousness. This grace is not found in the human mind, not in the peace the world gives. Number 7. We cannot be separated from the good of consciousness any more than a gold ring can be separated from the gold it is formed of. Number 8. There is no consciousness and me. Consciousness constitutes our life, mind, soul, law, activity and being. Consciousness is the substance. The individual is the form as which consciousness appears. Number 9. We are not human beings as we seem to be. We are pure spiritual being. Number 10. We cannot be separated from consciousness, but we can entertain a sense of separation from consciousness. Number 11. The spiritual light is easily detected. We see it in the eyes, we hear it in the voice, we observe it in the vitality and vigour of the body. Number 12. The whole purpose of our existence is to be a fitting instrument through which our reality can shine through. Number 13. Our vision is always on the one invisible presence at the centre of our being, here and now. Number 14. As we learn to tune within and let this imprisoned perfume escape, then does it become visible into our being. Number 15. Once we have achieved this contact with our inner being, we are free. Chapter 3. Number 1. Meditation requires a letting go of personal selfhood with its egotistic claim to possessing a wisdom of its own, in order that the power of consciousness within can take over. Number 2. This power is not within our body, but within our consciousness. Number 3. When the conscious thinking mind comes to a stop, the invisible presence is given an opportunity to function. Until then, we are merely functioning on the mental level. Number 4. The human mind cannot be the avenue for the activity of the soul. A higher consciousness must be reached. Number 5. In meditation, we do not think about our problem. We turn within and wait until we feel a response, a stirring within ourselves. Chapter 4, Number 1. How many have felt the flow of consciousness in their minds, within their souls, in their bodies? Number 2. Consciousness is forever being life, forever being love, forever expressing its life, love, intelligence. Number 3. Consciousness is a state of being, a state of infinite intelligence and ever-present love. Watch what happens when you merely stand still in being. Number 4. Consciousness is one. One power, one law, one substance, one cause. Number 5. There is only one substance and one law, and because of this there is no substance to be destroyed, to be healed or improved. Number 6. Consciousness cannot be known with the human mind, but if we listen and are still, in that stillness consciousness reveals itself. Number 7. The presence of the infinite invisible is within our consciousness. Number 8. We realize that consciousness is within our own being, but not confined within the limits of our flesh. Number 9. No surgeon can operate and find out consciousness, and yet it is within us, nearer than hands and feet. Number 10. The activity of consciousness maintains every individual, supports it, feeds it, sustains it. Stand still and be directed by this invisible force. Number 11. The nature of consciousness is I, that I which dwells in the midst of us, that I which we recognize to be individualized as our own being. Number 12. This I is not the body we see with our eyes. It is the gentle I which looks out from the center of our being. Number 13. The human self-centered I must die daily to the inner I. Number 14. Consciousness is my individual being. Consciousness constitutes my being. Consciousness is the life, the soul of my being. Consciousness is the substance of which my body is formed. Consciousness is the only law governing me. Number 15. The temptation is to believe we have a being separate and apart from consciousness. Chapter 5, Number 1. This is the way. Constant meditation, a constant turning within so that the inner impulse is kept fresh. Number 2. At every stage of our unfoldment, we are tempted to believe that something we do or think in the human realm will help us in the development of our spiritual awareness. Number 3. Psychic visions are entirely in the psychic level or in the mental realm of consciousness. They have nothing to do with the world of spirit. Number 4. Thoughts are world thoughts. We are like antennae, picking up all the broadcasts of the world. If we discard these world thoughts, they will die for lack of feeding. Only as we accept them as our thoughts do we feed them. Number 5. In the moment of silence, we begin to understand that consciousness is an infinite intelligence imbued with love, and it functions as our being when conscious thinking has been stilled. Number 6. In our everyday life, we may have one plan in mind, and the cosmic mind may have another, but we shall never know its plan so long as we are busily engaged in thinking, scheming, and reacting to the activities and distractions of the world. Number 7. This human mind, this reasoning, thinking mind, is not consciousness, but it is a facet of consciousness, an avenue of awareness through which we receive knowledge and wisdom from consciousness. Number 8. Most of us have periods of gradual progression, punctuated by interludes of desolation, when we feel we have lost the way and are wandering in a maze of conflict and contradiction. Often we find that after these valley experiences, we go forward to new heights. Part 2. Forward. Number 1. The truth, the great light that heals, multiplies, supports, maintains and sustains, is within you. Number 2. All that you are seeking is embodied within you. You are self-complete in consciousness. Chapter 6. Number 1. Out of the void and darkness, out of the stillness of our consciousness, life moves to create for us our human world of form. Number 2. The soul of this universe is sending itself forth into individual expression as you and as me. Chapter 7. Number 1. We are not separate and apart from consciousness. We are the very essence of consciousness, the very selfhood of consciousness, unfolded, revealed, and brought into active expression as individual being. Number 2. Peace is embodied in the soul of man. It is never dependent upon any external condition. It exists eternally in the midst of us. Our mistake has been in seeking peace from each other, in believing that others had the power to give or to withhold peace, or in relying upon others for our harmony. It is this reliance on people and outer circumstances that has been our failure. Number 3. We have no mind apart from consciousness. We only believe we do. Number 4. Infinite being appears outwardly as your being and mine. Number 5. All creation is love, itself, freely flowing. Number 6. All that is in and of consciousness. Number 7. Above all things, we must not judge after the testimony of the eyes or the ears. Number 8. We become beholders of consciousness as we relinquish those judgments that come to us by the seeing of the eye and the hearing of the ear. Chapter 8. Number 1. Consciousness is the creator of all that is. Number 2. Consciousness is the life and substance of all form, the creative principle of all that is. Number 3. Consciousness is the activity governing the functions and organs of the body. Number 4. If we take our eyes away from the form long enough to look behind it into the invisible and see consciousness as the principle of all life, we shall understand the difference between material living and spiritual living. Number 5. Exercise. Who am I? What am I? Where am I? Number 6. My being is not dependent on my body. My body is dependent on my being. Chapter 9. Number 1. The I within us is multiplying out of the unseen resources of spirit, not taking anything from anyone, not dividing that which is already in the world, and not drawing upon the visible resources of the earth. Number 2. We experience lack, or we are supplied according to the state of our consciousness. Whatever is to appear in our life must appear as the result of the activity of truth in our consciousness. Number 3. The invisible soul of me is the substance of all form. Number 4. There is an invisible law operating as a law of multiplication and as a law of attraction. Number 5. All good flows out from the center of my being, supplying my every need. Chapter 10. Number 1. Consciousness is the real mind of our being. Number 2. In the stillness, as we touch the vision of our oneness, consciousness pours its infinite good through us. Chapter 11. Number 1. The prevalent belief is that there are many minds with diverse interests, that we can get something from somebody, or that somebody may take something from us. Number 2. In the infinite way, we understand that we are not beings separate and apart from each other, but one in consciousness. Number 3. The one infinite intelligence acting through me communicates with the one infinite intelligence acting through you. Number 4. Our conduct towards others must be, love thy neighbours as thyself. Love your enemies. Forgive 70 times 7. Pray for them which despitefully use you. Number 5. There is only one infinite being. We can never fear a person if we remember that consciousness is one. In that oneness, there can be no discord, inharmony, or injustice to anyone. Number 6. Home is the expression of the consciousness of the individuals comprising the household. It takes in the atmosphere of the consciousness of those who make it. Chapter 12, Number 1. Immortality is the realization of our true identity as consciousness, an identity without beginning and without end, eternal and everlasting. Number 2. Each in his own time must leave this plane of consciousness. Those with a right understanding of the nature of consciousness will make the transition without struggle, pain, or infirmity. Number 3. There is no difference between the flow of consciousness this minute or 100 years from now. Number 4. Life never ages or ends. Number 5. Fingernails and hair are cut off and grow again. The skin sloughs off. The cells in the body are constantly changing, and yet despite these changes, the consciousness which is our true identity remains. Number 6. We have identified the body as ourselves, but consciousness is who I am. Number 7. All those who exist in the beginning exist now. All those who exist now will exist forever. Number 8. Within me is the force which is functioning from the within to the without. I do not have a life force. I am the life force. Nothing can ever stop the being that I am, because I exist independently of what the world calls matter. Number 9. The invisible activity of truth operating in my consciousness is renewing me physically, mentally, morally and financially. Day by day, this inner selfhood, which is my invisible being, is manufacturing whatever is necessary for the fulfillment of my earthly experience. Number 10. I remain as an observer. Number 11. I do not express life. Life expresses itself as my infinite, individual, indestructible being. Chapter 13. Number 1. When the human mind rests and performs its proper function as an avenue of awareness, consciousness functions as our mind, as our experience, and as our life. Number 2. Good cannot flow to you. Good expresses itself from within and pours out upon all who come within range of your conscious awareness of this truth. It is only necessary to refrain from taking thought, to relinquish all anxious, fearful thought, to be still. Number 3. The thought of man is not power. Number 4. Anything you accept as power, apart from consciousness, may harm you, but of itself it has no more power than a shadow upon a wall. You suffer from your belief that there is a power apart from your own consciousness. Number 5. Harm comes, not from another, but from you, because of your deviation from truth. Number 6. Nothing exists outside your own consciousness. Number 7. Never look upon temporary discord as failure, lack of demonstration, or the absence of spiritual vision and understanding. Number 8. These are your opportunities to prove the nothingness of what the world calls power. They will be dissolved when they no longer serve their purpose as spurs to your spiritual unfoldment. Number 9. When an appearance of discord looms upon your horizon, relax, rest, be at peace in the assurance of my presence within you. Chapter 14. Number 1. Supply is the source of money. Supply is the substance of which money is formed. Chapter 15. Number 1. Meditation is not an end in itself. That which we are seeking is a conscious realization of the presence of consciousness. We do not want consciousness and we want consciousness alone. That is the final step on the spiritual path. Number 2. Because the form is inseparable and indivisible from its source, even the form is eternal. Part 3. Chapter 16. Number 1. In the life of every seeker, there comes a time when he feels the presence and becomes aware, in one way or another, of an actual transcendental presence and power. Number 2. Before the full and complete realization of the new life has taken place, the breaking up of the old forms may appear as a problem of some sort. Number 3. The valley experiences are but a preparation for the mountain experience. Number 4. The time will come when we should no longer depend upon the illumination of some other person. We must have the experience for ourselves, so that we can be in the world but not of it. Number 5. Let us be beholders, recognizing a transcendental being as it performs its work through our consciousness. Number 6. Once we learn to give up the sense of personal possession, as indicated by the words I, me, mine, we begin to find the real meaning of universal, impersonal, harmonious living. Number 7. The presence does everything for us, and we live on this plane of existence as witnesses, beholders. Number 8. Exercise. With patience and practice, we develop the consciousness of a beholder. Number 9. Rest in the center of your being while the storms pass overhead. Chapter 17. Number 1. Meditation leads to that illumination which becomes first communion with consciousness and finally union. Number 2. When illumination comes, we no longer need anything found in the outer world. Everything and everyone becomes part of our being. Number 3. In the silence of our consciousness, the creative power of awareness comes forth. Number 4. All the joy and fulfillment which surge through our being is a silent testimony that I, in the midst of thee, am mighty. Chapter 18. Number 1. I of my own self am nothing. Consciousness is all. Number 2. Spirit permeates human consciousness whenever human consciousness is receptive. Number 3. The answer, the solution to all problems is the realized light. Number 4. As you are attuned to the infinite invisible in meditation, the light finds an outlet through your consciousness, touching the lives of others, awakening their consciousness and bringing what the world calls healing to their bodies and affairs. Number 5. Illumination dissolves all material ties and binds men together with the golden chains of spiritual understanding. The only restraint is the discipline of soul. Therefore we know liberty without license. We are a united universe without physical limits. The illumined walk without fear, by grace.